We start with our top story of the day, where President Donald Trump and President Vladimir Putin ended their highly anticipated summit in Alaska without a ceasefire or roadmap to peace in Ukraine. Both claimed progress but offered no details. Trump told reporters, "We didn't get there," while calling the talks a 10 out of 10 and saying a deal was still possible. Putin expressed he was sincerely interested in ending the war, but gave no plan. Both leaders avoided questions, leaving key issues unanswered. In a Fox News interview, Trump floated a prisoner swap and said territorial arrangements were discussed, calling the meeting very warm and claiming they were close to a deal. Yet he stressed any agreement depends on Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky, who was not invited. The Kremlin later called the summit very positive, where spokesperson Dmitry Peskov said the leaders gave exhaustive statements explaining why no questions were taken and insisted their talks would allow them to confidently move forward on a peace settlement. Reaction was sharply divided. Analysts said Putin gained prestige, while Trump left with zero. With Kyiv silent and no new steps announced, the war's future remains uncertain. The red carpet greeting in Anchorage provided the drama, but not the substance. We now have some breaking news coming in. The White House has said that Trump is on the phone with NATO leaders after a lengthy call with Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky. We're now joined by Rohan Gunaratne, who's an international affairs expert. He joins us live from Singapore to discuss this further. Thank you, Rohan, for joining us here on the program. Many analysts, commentators are saying that in reality it was Ukraine who won these talks due to the fact that no territory was conceded and that Donald Trump floated the idea of a trilateral summit between the Russian president himself and the Ukrainian president. What are your thoughts on that statement?
Thomas, this is a major breakthrough that the two leaders of America and Russia met on the question of Ukraine. So the critics of Trump and Putin, they must understand that peace is as tough as victory in war. That is, this is the phase one of that negotiation. And they achieved something very important. That is, they built a very good relationship. And not only that, President Trump's wife, Melania's letter was given to Putin, explaining the tragedy for the children, both in Russia and in Ukraine. And the next phase of this meeting is to bring Zelensky in. So I believe that this summit is a victory in the direction of peace. It is a summit that should be praised. It is a summit that is going to one day make peace between these two countries. Europe and Russia has been at war. When the threat to Russia recedes, when the European leaders better understand the concerns of Russia, then the fighting will end. So there must be a structured peace process. Ukraine is only the battleground. We have to look at the larger forces that is driving these two entities, the Russian and the European or the Western entity, into this kind of war and conflict.
Yes, indeed, Rohan. We're joined by Yulia Kazdabina, who's a senior fellow at the Ukrainian Prism. She joins us live from the Ukrainian capital of Kyiv. Thank you very much, Julia, for joining us on the program. We have not yet heard from Volodymyr Zelensky and his statements following this this summit between the Ukrainian and United States presidents. However, what are the people of Ukraine saying? What are their thoughts about the outcomes of this? Donald Trump's statements in saying that he wants a trilateral summit with Putin and himself, and also Zelensky included as well, of course.
I mean, those are just words. We'll see how he's going to get there. Because so far, he has not been able to accomplish anything. And I could not agree less with the statements of the previous speaker who said that this was a victory for the peace process because there is no peace process. There is President Trump who wants to make a deal, and there is President Putin who does not want to make a deal and who is trying to manipulate the process as much as he wants, as much as he's able. And we see signs of that because he's not talking about peace in Ukraine. He's talking with President Trump about things that please him. And I mean the claim that 2020 elections were falsified and how great President Trump is and all these things. But when it comes to the situation on the ground, Russian demands do not change. They're still the same. And that's the reason why this summit ended without any deal and not even a ceasefire. And actually, Russian attacks continued while they were talking, and they continue now. So Russia does not want peace, and all this talk about there being a threat to Russian security, that's a made-up excuse for the war, because if we're talking about NATO expansion to the east, NATO is a defensive alliance, and the key article of the NATO alliance is Article 5, which is an attack on one is an attack on everybody. So it means that if one country gets attacked, then everybody will join that country in defending it. So it's not an alliance that's going to attack Russia. Also, if you look at the state of NATO's defense industry now, you can clearly see that they were not preparing for a major war. And the state of their militaries, the clear indication that they were not preparing for a major war, unlike Russia. So all this talk about taking Russia's security considerations seriously, those are not security considerations. Those are made-up excuses to justify aggression in an imperial war. So, and no progress was achieved in these talks with regard to stopping this aggression.
Yes, Julia, in regards to that aggression, we have some breaking news that have just come in just a few moments ago, where Russia has launched 85 attack drones and a ballistic missile at Ukraine overnight. That's what Kiev said just now. Ukraine's Air Force have said that Moscow had attacked with an Iskander-M ballistic missile and 85 Shahed-type drones, while also attacking frontline areas in 4 regions. Rohan, I wanted to come back to you with that breaking news. Obviously, it was all smiles in Alaska, with a backdrop behind the behind the Russian president and the United States president saying securing peace. Their actions don't say otherwise, however. Do you think Vladimir Putin is really serious about a peace deal, or is this just him stalling for time?
Russians are serious about a peace deal. Russia doesn't want the constant attacks against Russia. Ukrainians are committed to a peace deal. They don't want their own cities and their citizens being killed. But certainly there is a geopolitical dispute between Russia and Europe. It is true that a devastating attack took place immediately after these talks, but I believe that these talks will move forward the peace deal. It is because neither side can win. Russia can never win in a war against the West. The West cannot win a war against the Russians. So peace is the only way. Certainly Putin wants a peace deal because he doesn't want to leave office with Russia and Europe at war. And if there is no peace, that is the direction this conflict is going to head. It's going to expand into the rest of Europe. Trump knows that, and many European leaders know that. Many security and intelligence services that are disrupting Russian plots on European soil, they know that this is a war that is going to lead to descent to chaos. And that is why this summit is an important summit.
Julia, I wanted to come back to you, your immediate reaction to this fresh barrage of attacks from Russia onto Ukrainian territory. especially with the global news media, some of which are hailing Donald Trump for his peace negotiations, while we have had no outcome of these talks, and as you said, only possible statements that Donald Trump has said, which are very much known to be unpredictable, unreliable. Julia, what is the feeling in Ukraine right now, given that these talks have come to an end?
Well, they went just as expected. I mean, we have been dealing with Russians for a very, very long time, and so we know their negotiation tactics, and we know President Trump's weaknesses. And so, when you talk to people at the front line, they all said that we do not see any change in Russian behavior, and we do not even discuss those peace talks among ourselves because Russia continues attacking and it's not going to change. And so that's exactly what happened. We saw President Putin reap the publicity benefits of being received like a king at the US soil, but not making any concessions and not making any steps towards a peace deal. But I mean, we also need to understand that when Putin talks about a deal, he talks about a deal between the US and Russia, and Ukraine not being a subject of that deal. And when President Trump talks about a deal, he talks about a deal between Ukraine and Russia, and Ukraine being subject in this deal. And so I think that's a major contradiction, and that's not going to let this situation be resolved. And Putin is going to continue manipulating, talking about wanting a deal, but at the same time not making any concessions.
Yes, thank you very much, Julia. We're also joined by Dr. Ajay Dua. He's a former Secretary of Commerce and senior economist, and he joins us live from New Delhi. Dr. Dua, thank you for joining us. Your viewpoint on the outcome of the summit with Vladimir Putin and Donald Trump, where it was all smiles. However, this update has just reminded us that hostility has not stopped. Securing peace was the motto, but not the practice. Dr. Dua, your analysis of this?
I think it's a beginning. Where it gets, we don't know. There is a high degree of uncertainty about it. People expected, particularly in the West, that a lot would come out of the summit, including a ceasefire would be agreed to by Russia. I thought that that was a rather a tall order. A war which has been going on for 3.5 years, a lethal war with no holds barred, was bound to take some time to even have effect a ceasefire amongst the forces at each other's throat, virtually. Therefore, I would say that the first talk between the two presidents is a mere beginning. Where it goes, how it goes, depends upon a lot of factors. And one of those is going to be, as far as we are talking about Ukraine, that the stand of the Ukrainian president and his country is as a very material aspect. No one in the world has the right to arrive at an agreement on what parts of Ukraine should be given away, what should be retained. Yes, the Russians would demand, and probably they have made a demand yesterday, that all the 6 states or 6 provinces which are under their occupation should be given to them, which rightly probably was resisted by President Trump, because the land doesn't belong to him, that it belongs to the elected people and their leaders of Ukraine. They have not yet been taken into confidence. The fact that they have agreed to meet once again, and President Putin has offered Moscow as the next site, the next venue. Hopefully they will meet, and there we would have President Zelensky also there with his advisors. Like earlier it was thought that only the meeting is going to be one-to-one, But then 3 advisors from each side were there to help out the presidents. And the Russians have probably gone happy that nothing was conceded and nothing was demanded from them beyond putting forward a proposal. President Putin was also happy that nothing was forced upon him and nothing was made conditional, saying, unless you do this, we will not go forward. Probably the only place where some such thing was said was when President Putin wanted to talk about business relationships between the US and Russia. He was reminded
Yes.
that
Dr. Dewar, I do apologise. We have some news for our audience. The White House has dismissed